Imagine it is the middle of the night. The year is 1850. Somewhere in the darkness of Maryland, a small group of people move silently through a dense forest. They cannot carry lanterns. They cannot make even the slightest sound. Every step must be careful. Every breath must be held. Because somewhere behind them, men with guns may already be searching. If they are caught, the punishment will be brutal. Some will be whipped until their backs are torn open. Some will be imprisoned in chains. Others may be sold to plantations hundreds of miles away, never to see their families again. But still, they walk. They walk through briars that cut their feet. They walk through rivers that soak their clothes. They walk through nights so dark they cannot see their own hands before their faces. Why? Because somewhere beyond this darkness lies a place they have only dreamed about. Freedom. This was the reality for thousands of enslaved men, women, and children who risked everything for a chance to be free. Their journeys were part of a secret network known as the Underground Railroad. It was not truly underground. It was not actually a railroad. There were no tracks, no engines, no tickets. Yet for tens of thousands of enslaved people in the United States, it became the only road that led them out of bondage. To understand the Underground Railroad, we must first understand what drove people to attempt such a dangerous escape. Why? Because somewhere beyond this darkness lies a place they have only dreamed about. Freedom. This was the reality for thousands of enslaved men, women, and children who risked everything for a chance to be free. Their journeys were part of a secret network known as the Underground Railroad. It was not truly underground. It was not actually a railroad. There were no tracks, no engines, no tickets. Yet for tens of thousands of enslaved people in the United States, it became the only road that led them out of bondage. To understand the Underground Railroad, we must first understand what drove people to attempt such a dangerous escape. In the early 19th century, slavery dominated the southern United States. From the tobacco fields of Virginia to the cotton plantations of Mississippi, millions of African Americans lived and died in bondage. By 1850, nearly 4 million human beings were held as slaves in America. Their lives were controlled entirely by slave owners. They could be bought and sold like livestock. Families were frequently separated without warning. Parents watched helplessly as their children were marched away to unknown destinations. Children grew up knowing they might never see their mothers or fathers again. The law offered no protection. Enslaved people were not allowed to vote. They were not allowed to testify in court. They were not allowed to learn to read or write. In many places, even gathering in groups without permission could bring severe punishment. Plantation owners used fear to maintain control. Whippings were common. The lash left permanent scars on backs and on soles. Escape attempts were punished brutally, often by death. And slave patrols, groups of armed white men, regularly searched the countryside for runaways. But despite these dangers, the desire for freedom never disappeared. It lived in the songs they sang while working in the fields. It lived in the prayers whispered at night. It lived in the stories told from parent to child. Across the South, enslaved people whispered about secret paths north, paths that might lead them beyond the reach of slavery, paths that might lead them to freedom. Those secret paths became known as the Underground Railroad. But it was not a single road or route. Instead, it was a vast shifting network of hidden trails, safe houses, and brave individuals willing to help those fleeing slavery. The network stretched across multiple states, from Kentucky to Ohio, from Maryland to Pennsylvania, from Virginia to New York, and beyond, all the way into Canada, where slavery had been abolished decades earlier. To protect everyone involved, participants developed a secret language. Safe houses were called stations. The people who guided escapees were called conductors, and the enslaved men, women, and children seeking freedom were known as passengers or cargo. Many stations were ordinary homes. From the outside, they looked like any other farmhouse, church, or barn. But inside, they were places of refuge. Some had hidden rooms behind walls. Others had secret basements beneath floorboards. Some had trapdoors concealed under rugs or furniture. Here, tired travelers could rest. They could eat a warm meal. They could receive fresh clothing and directions for the next stage of their journey. Most travel happened at night. Under the cover of darkness, escapees moved through forests, followed rivers, and crossed fields. They navigated by the stars. One star in particular guided them north, the North Star. To many escaping slaves, it became a symbol of hope. It was constant. It was reliable. It was freedom's guide. As long as that star shone above them, freedom lay somewhere ahead. The Underground Railroad existed because of extraordinary courage from both the escapees and those who helped them. Free black communities played a crucial role. In cities like Philadelphia, New York, and Boston, free African Americans provided shelter, food, clothing, and money. They shared information about safe routes. They warned of dangers ahead. Some white abolitionists also joined the cause. These were men and women who believed. In 1849, Harriet Tubman made a daring escape. Fearing she would be sold south, she fled alone into the night. She traveled nearly 90 miles through forests and swamps, following the North Star until she reached the free state of Pennsylvania. For the first time in her life, she was free. But Tubman refused to forget the people she had left behind. She later said, "I had crossed the line of which I had so long been dreaming. I was free, but there was no one to welcome me to the land of freedom. I was a stranger in a strange land." So she went back, again and again. Over the next decade, Tubman made approximately 13 secret trips into slave territory. She guided her parents, her siblings, and dozens of others to freedom. She carried a pistol and warned that anyone who turned back would be shot, because a deserter could betray the entire group. Through courage, planning, and iron determination, she helped approximately 70 people escape slavery. She insisted she never lost a single passenger. Because of her bravery, many began calling her Moses, like the biblical leader who guided his people out of bondage in Egypt. The journey to freedom was never easy. It was fraught with danger at every step. Runaway slaves faced constant threats. Slave catchers hunted them for reward money. Newspapers printed advertisements offering large sums for capture. These ads described clothing, height, scars, and other identifying marks. In 1850, the United States Congress passed the Fugitive Slave Act. This law made the situation even more perilous. It required authorities in free states to return escaped slaves to their owners. It denied accused runaways the right to a jury trial. It punished anyone who helped them. Even people who had already reached free states could now be captured and sent back into slavery. Because of this law, many freedom seekers continued traveling north until they reached Canada. There, slavery had already been abolished. There, they could truly be free. Conductors like Harriet Tubman used careful strategies to avoid capture. They traveled mostly at night. They avoided large towns and main roads. They relied on trusted contacts who knew safe routes and hiding places. Sometimes, escapees hid in wagons covered with hay or vegetables. Other times, they stayed hidden in attics, barns, or underground cellars for days or weeks at a time. The journey could take weeks or even months. Travelers faced hunger, exhaustion, and illness. They endured cold rain and freezing snow. They crossed rivers in stolen boats or on makeshift rafts. Yet despite these risks, thousands of enslaved people attempted the journey. Historians estimate that between 25,000 and 50,000 people escaped slavery through the Underground Railroad between 1800 and 1865. Each journey was an act of extraordinary courage. Each freedom seeker was willing to risk death for a single chance at liberty. As the 1850s progressed, tensions over slavery continued to grow. The the nation was dividing. Northern and southern states increasingly disagreed over whether slavery should expand into new territories. Debates grew heated. Violence erupted in places like Kansas. Harriet Tubman continued her work. She met the fiery abolitionist John Brown and supported his plans, though she fell ill and could not join his ill-fated raid on Harper's Ferry. By 1861, the tensions could no longer be contained. The American Civil War began. During the war, Tubman continued serving the cause of freedom. She worked as a nurse for the Union Army, caring for wounded soldiers. She served as a scout, gathering intelligence behind Confederate lines. And in 1863, she became the first woman to lead an armed military raid in American history. The Combahee River Raid freed more than 700 enslaved people in South Carolina. Slowly, the war turned against the South. In 1863, President Abraham Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation, declaring slaves in Confederate states free. Union armies marched through the South, liberating thousands as they advanced. Finally, in 1865, the war ended. And with it came a historic change. The 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution abolished slavery throughout the nation. After more than 2 centuries of struggle, slavery in America had finally come to an end. Somewhere far to the north, near the Canadian border, a small group of exhausted travelers stepped out of a forest at sunrise. Their clothes were torn, their feet were bleeding. They had walked for weeks, sometimes months, through darkness and fear. But this time, no slave catchers followed them. No chains waited. No one could force them back. For the first time in their lives, they were free. The Underground Railroad remains one of the most powerful stories of courage in American history. It was built not by governments or armies. It was built by ordinary people, farmers hiding strangers in their barns, church leaders organizing help for the desperate, former slaves returning to danger to save their families, and brave conductors like Harriet Tubman who risked death again and again. Together, they created a hidden network that helped thousands escape bondage. Together, they proved that even in the darkest times, courage and compassion can light the path to freedom. The legacy of the Underground Railroad reminds us that the fight for human freedom has always depended on those willing to stand up for what is right, and that the North Star still shines for all who seek liberty.